I want to tell you about something that keeps real estate investors up at night, or at least it should. One slip and fall, one broken staircase, one tenant injury on your rental property, and you could lose everything. You see, your properties, your savings, your retirement accounts, gone. You might think, hey, Clint, I have insurance, I'm covered. But here's the reality. Most landlord policies cap out at $500,000 to $1 million. What happens when a jury awards someone $4 million or $10 million? Who's going to pay that difference? Well, in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how one tenant injury can destroy your entire portfolio, and more importantly, the step-by-step protection strategy that we use here at Anderson to bulletproof our clients' assets. So if you own rental property, this is a non-negotiable structure. Let's dive right in. All right, so let's talk about premise liability here, just to lay the groundwork so you understand where I'm coming from. You see, the legal concept holds that landlords are responsible when someone is injured on their property. And so typically this is referred to as premises liability. So as a landlord, you have this legal duty to maintain your rental property in a safe condition. And if you fail to do that and someone gets hurt, you can be held liable for their injuries. So what are some common scenarios? Well, maybe a tenant slips and falls on a icy walkway that you failed to clear or salt, or a guest falls down some broken stairs that you never repaired, or someone is injured due to inadequate lighting in some common areas, or a tenant is hurt because of faulty wiring or a building code violation. So what's going to happen here if someone's injured? The court's going to apply a legal standard and they're going to evaluate 4 elements, all right? They're going to say, hey, did you owe this person what we call the duty of care? Now, this is basic law school stuff here I'm sharing with you. It's what I went through. So they're going to look and say, hey, do you have a duty of care? Did you breach that duty, meaning that you failed to maintain the property or repair it if you knew about the hazard? Causation, did your breach cause the injury, and then was the person damaged? So the damages is going to be the last one. And if the answer to these 4 things, duty of care, breach of duty, causation, and damages is yes, then you're liable. So what does that mean then? What it means is that this can be real financial devastation for us if we're not putting in place barriers to prevent ourselves from being held personally liable for premises liability. The average median award in the United States right now is $90,000. And you might be thinking, well, hey, that's manageable. I'm just going to have a landlord policy and I'm protected. And I get it. But see, the purpose of using asset protection is to protect against those catastrophic injuries that blow way past your policy limits in a second. And that's where the real harm can start to happen. For example, let's say that a tenant, slips and falls on a wet floor in an apartment building hallway, falls down the stairs and suffers a traumatic brain injury. The jury awards that tenant $4.2 million. Now, your landlord policy typically caps out at about $500,000. So that means you're on the hook for $3.7 million if you own that property in your own name. And if you don't have the cash, then what the plaintiff's attorney is going to do is they're going to start looking at your other rentals. They're going to look at your savings account, your personal residence, your retirement accounts, trying to figure out a way in which they're going to get paid. Essentially, everything's on the table. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're protecting our assets, because your current insurance is not going to be enough. And this is the problem that I run into a lot when I'm talking to new landlords. They think, hey, insurance is great. I was told by my local guy that's all I need. But those local attorneys that are not involved or not real estate investors and working with understanding the problems that real estate investors face fail to realize that there are major gaps there, and they don't ensure that there's the right type of planning in place, because insurance doesn't cover everything. I mean, judgments exceeding policy limits, well, you don't have enough insurance. Punitive damages, right? In some states, you're not covered there under your insurance policy. Certain types of claims that tenants will bring, maybe it's slander or mental anguish, okay, they're not going to be covered as well. And you might be wondering, well, why would a tenant have mental anguish? I don't know, maybe it's the way they felt they were treated. It's one of the things about society now that we have to be aware of. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we're protecting it. 1 property, 1 lawsuit. 3 properties in one entity or in your own name, 3 potential lawsuits. 10, well, you get the idea. So standard insurance alone is not going to protect you. So this is what we need to do. We want to make sure we're setting the structure up where we take and we place 1 property per LLC. So just like this, if I had 2 properties, I would create 2 limited liability companies. Now, by doing this, if somebody's injured here in LLC number 1, this is LLC number 2, if somebody's injured on this property, then what happens is that these assets right here is the only things at risk. So you're down here, and as long as you haven't given the court any reason to ignore that LLC's form and pierce the veil of it, then they're not going to be coming after you individually. We're going to keep that liability contained. Now, yes, maybe you have $500,000 on policy limits there, so they could get that. Maybe the property has $600,000 in equity. Yes, they could get that as well. But what can't they get? Well, all your personal stuff, your personal residence, your personal savings account down here, your boat, this property over here, all that's going to be protected from that creditor because they're in different structures. So the structures and you are protected from the claims that are brought against that one limited liability company. So this is a must for landlords. You want to make sure that you're ensuring that your assets are adequately protected, that they're not held in one company. And that's a huge mistake we see all the time. You're using multiple LLCs. You still have to have insurance though. Don't think that if you set up an LLC, you can drop your insurance. That will not work. Now, if you're fortunate enough to live in a state that has adopted a series limited liability company, and I have other videos on my channel that discuss this in more detail. But if you're in one of those states, well, then the series LLC makes a lot of sense. And what do I mean by that? It operates the same way that I just shared with you, but it does it at a lower friction point, meaning all you have to do is set up one parent LLC. So this is my parent company here. And then what you'll do is you're going to come over here and you're going to create new cells. I'll create a cell for each property that I'm going to acquire. And I put each of these properties into these cells. Now they operate just like I just shared with you earlier in the previous example. If anything goes wrong in this cell, then it's only that cell that is at risk or the assets held inside of it. And all your other cells, okay, they can all be owned by the parent company like this, they're all going to be protected from that potential liability. So this is isolating your assets just like we did there, but we're using a different form of structure called a series limited liability company. Now for some of you, maybe the series doesn't work for you. Maybe you're in Florida. Then what your structure is typically going to look like if you're in Florida is maybe you're using what is referred to as a land trust instead. So a land trust can also offer asset protection in certain states. So in Florida, we could set up a land trust like this, put a property into it, and have the land trust held down here by a Wyoming LLC. In fact, I just responded to a comment on my YouTube channel. Somebody's asking me this question. They said, hey, I live in Florida. Can I just set up land trusts to hold my real estate rather than have separate LLCs? And the answer is yes, because in Florida, you have asset protection with a land trust. So if anything goes wrong in one of those limited liability companies, then it's only that LLC or that land trust holding the property that's going to be at risk. Go boom, boom, boom. We go like that and we could lose that one. Now, if you're not in Florida and you want to use the land trust strategy, then you have to do this. Okay, because in other states, let's say this was a Colorado land trust here, owning property. Then you have to mirror this with a separate LLC like that. Because if you're not in Florida, if somebody sues the land trust, then that claim gets dropped down to the owner of the trust, which happens to be that LLC buffer entity. So that's really important. Now, you saw me draw this out. It's really key when you're building out all these structures, always keep this entity right here, Wyoming Holding LLC, down at the bottom. This is your buffer entity, all right? This offers what we call charging order protections. Okay, so I've been talking about LLCs and how as landlords, these things can come down and take our assets. Well, when we set up a structure like this, and we have the properties inside of here, and we're focusing just on the claims that are brought against the properties, yeah, we got great protection here. But the other thing to appreciate is that protection or liability is a two-way street, right? The assets create liability for us, or we could create liability for our assets, meaning I could be sued personally. Maybe I'm involved in a car accident. Maybe it's a contract claim that's brought against me. Whatever the lawsuit is, does not matter. If a judgment's entered against me personally, the question is, can they take that judgment and go and collect on my assets? The way you stop that from happening is you put together this blocker entity here in Wyoming that has strong charging order protections, and creditors cannot force that LLC to distribute its assets to them so they don't get paid. This is the strongest type of protection for real estate investors, or one of the strongest types of protection you can put in place to make sure you're protecting yourself. And that's not a one size fits all. There's a reason why I said Wyoming. All right, because when you're doing or creating an entity stack like this, you want to make sure that this entity here, which stands between your assets and your personal creditors, is set up in a state that gives you the maximum protection. And that's what Wyoming does for individuals with their laws. So that's how you'd go about setting that up. Now, what happens if you don't protect yourself? Well, let me paint the worst case scenario for you. You own 5 rental properties, all in your personal name or all in one LLC. You don't have insurance. One person falls down. They're going to blow that up. They're going to take all the assets out of the LLC. If you didn't have insurance, then you're going to lose your LLC as well, and they're going to come after you personally. So if they got an award of $3 million, well, guess what? Your properties are gone, and then your personal assets are also going to be at risk. So we want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves into that situation. So the bottom line is asset protection, it isn't optional. It's a survival technique here, especially in the United States. California alone has more attorneys than any other industrialized country in the world. That's a scary thought. Those guys need to eat their food if you're not structured your assets properly. Just takes one slip and fall, and then you have premises liability, which leads to a lawsuit. Okay, but when you structure things right and you're using separate LLCs or series LLCs, land trusts coupled with insurance, and you have proper capitalizations of your companies, then you create a fortress around your wealth. And that's what we're doing here. If we're going to be responsible investors, we want to build something that ensures that we're good stewards of what we're creating. So listen, if you found this video valuable, be sure to smash the like button, right? And subscribe for more asset protection strategies as I release videos on that for real estate investors. And if you know of anybody who needs to hear this, be sure to share this video out. And if you've got questions, drop them into the comments. I answer all my questions that you leave personally. And if you have any ideas for new videos, be sure to put those in there as well. So until next time, protect your assets and build your real estate investing empire the smart way.